9 students, I am Miss Alexander, your social studies teacher. Welcome to lesson 8. In today's lesson, we are continuing with the new topic that we started, health and well-being, and we're also continuing and finishing off the subtopic looking at domestic violence. As usual, we take a recap of the previous session. So in the previous session, we understood that domestic violence is a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain control or power over an intimate partner or a family member. What else can you recall from the previous session? Let's take some true or false questions and let's see what you remember. The first question: only spouses or intimate partners are victims of domestic violence. Only spouses or intimate partners are victims of domestic violence. Is that true or is it false? This is an easy one. If you said false, you are correct. The statement is false. Let's look at the second question. Domestic violence can cause grief, death, and trauma. Domestic violence can cause grief, death, and trauma. Is that true or false? The statement is true. Now for our third question. Forms of domestic violence include physical and economic. Forms of domestic violence include physical and economic. Is it true or false? If you said true, you are correct. Now, let's take the final question. Listen keenly. Encouraging someone to spend money wisely and saving are forms of economic abuse. Encouraging someone to spend wisely and save their monies are forms of economic abuse. Is that true or is it false? I know you're smart, so you said false, and you are correct. I'm very happy that you remembered some of the key pointers that were mentioned in the previous lesson. In this lesson, you will be given takeaway activities, and you would have recognized by now that I love giving takeaway activities, so ensure you have your pen and paper close by. It may require of you to either work independently on these activities or seek assistance from someone else or an institution. It's important that you complete these activities because it helps you to understand the concepts a little clearer. And it also helps you to apply your understanding to what's happening in the wider society. So let's get right into today's lesson. What are our objectives? You will be able to discuss the methods that can be used to reduce or eliminate domestic violence. You will be able to name institutions that are in place to assist abused people. And you will be able to show love and tolerance and sympathy and empathy for those who are abused. So let's start with the first one. Methods to reduce or eliminate domestic violence. Reducing or eliminating domestic violence in our communities, villages, regions, and the country at large requires a collective intervention of individuals, institutions, and even the government. Can you think of some effective methods to reduce or eliminate domestic violence? Perhaps you might have already been using one of these methods, or you might have observed that some of these methods are being used in your community or your region. So let's look at a few of them. At the interpersonal level, we ought to teach and practice safe and healthy relationship skills. The second method that we can use is to disrupt the developmental paths towards partner violence by conducting early childhood home visitation, ensuring preschool enrichment with family engagement, and conducting parental skills and family relationship programs. A third method that can be used is creating protective environments by improving school climate and safety, organizational policies and workplace climate, and modifying the physical and social environment of our neighborhoods. A fourth method that can be used to eliminate or reduce domestic violence is one that we can use at the national level. And this includes penalties for domestic violence should be consistent and firm. At the national level, we should also have increased funding for support services. A sixth method that we can use is strengthening economic support for families. In the case of violence against women, help women to be economically independent. Now let's move on to looking at local institutions and non-governmental organizations that assist abused people. Have you ever heard of an organization or institution in your community, village, or region that provides assistance to abused persons? So here's your takeaway activity. I would like for you to investigate on these institutions and NGOs. Gather information on the name of the institution, the address, and if possible, a form of contact, whether it's via social media. It could be that they have a Facebook account or an Instagram account or even a Twitter account. Or the organization or institution may have a telephone number that you can actually call. By arming yourself with this information, you will be better able to assist someone when the need arises. And you will see how this ties in very nicely into the topic that we're going to move into. But before we move into that topic, let us list the NGOs and the institutions that we may know of. Have you ever heard of any of these? Help and Shelter, ChildLink Inc., Women and Gender Equality Commission, Red Thread Women, Crossroads Women's Center, Guyana Legal Aid Clinic, United Bridge Builders Mission, Heart to Heart Foundation. Have you ever heard of any of those? Now here's another takeaway activity for you. Write a story to demonstrate actions taken to reduce domestic violence. Write a story to demonstrate actions taken to reduce domestic violence. The institutions and NGOs that were just listed, they engage in activities on a day-to-day basis to ensure that domestic violence is limited or reduced within our society. You can be creative. You can even research on some of those institutions to see some of the works that they do to inspire you to write your story. Now let's move on to responding to the abused. When we started off, we said that we really want to know how to show love, be tolerant, be sympathetic and empathetic to those who are abused. Showing love, tolerance, and sympathy for the feelings of others is important, particularly those having experienced abuse. Responding in a positive way adds to the overall well-being and development of the abused person. So what are some ways you can think of that we can respond to persons who are abused? Let's look at a few that we are going to discuss today. Let the person know you're concerned about their safety. It's always good to let the abused person know how much you care for them and how much concern you have for their general safety and well-being. A second response that we can give is by giving support, by listening attentively and listening without judgment. This means that we do not criticize the person, all the biases that we may have, we put them aside and we listen to their story and take it as it is. A third response is offer specific help. Refer them to institutions or resources to help in a specific area. For example, referral to a counselor should they experience emotional abuse and need to go through the process of counseling. Or perhaps referral to the Guyana Legal Aid Clinic, for example, should they decide to take legal action against their abuser and they do not have sufficient finances to do so privately. Another response is to offer encouragement. A word of encouragement goes a very far way. Another response as well is by not placing shame, blame, or guilt on the abused. We may also respond by making a safety plan with the abused person. Sit them down, go through, help them develop a safety plan so that at the end of the day, their health and well-being will also be taken into consideration. And another way in which we can respond to the abused is by encouraging the abused to do things that bring about a sense of happiness and a sense of well-being, whether it's taking a walk, going to the ice cream parlor, making a favorite dessert or favorite meal. Encourage them to do things that bring along a sense of happiness and well-being. All right, students, well, let us wrap up today's session and understand some points before we go. We want to understand that 1, reducing or eliminating domestic violence in our communities, villages, regions, and the country at large requires the collective intervention of individuals, institutions, and even the government. The second point is that to reduce domestic violence, these steps ought to be taken. 1, at the interpersonal level, we should teach and practice safety and healthy relationship skills. 2, at the community level, protective environments can be created by improving school climate and safety, organizational policies and workplace climate, and modifying the physical and social environment of neighborhoods. And 3, at the national level, penalties for domestic violence should be consistent and firm and strengthen economic support for families. Another point we want to take away is that domestic violence affects our entire lives, including the health and well-being of an individual. Another point that we ought to take away from today is that when we commit to reducing domestic violence, it is a commitment to improve the health and well-being of ourselves and those around us. Well, students, this has brought us to the end of today's session. I trust that you would have learned quite a lot from these past 2 sessions as we looked at domestic violence and understand how much they can affect us and the people around us, and commit to ensuring that we indeed have good health and well-being and that we entreat with others in a positive way. This is all for today's lesson. I am Miss Alexander saying bye for now and see you in the next lesson.